33rd Street, south of where I am, at IIT. So I said, Magic 8 Ball. Sean Keller from IIT wants to know what the future is, what should I tell him? Shake up the Magic 8 Ball. It's up the road. I'm not sure if Sean is still employed at IIT after this. And I didn't know if this was a mystic thing, but the future is up the road, or really whether it was global positioning directions. In any case, that's what happens when you invite someone at UIC to go to IIT and tell them what the future is. I guess the manifesto that I wanted to give, and I said that I was going to speak as a local, which also goes to John's territory thing, which meant that I don't usually speak as a local in Chicago. I'm not seen as one. I'm seen as an outsider still. And part of that is self-constructed, which is I think schools of architecture are like embassies in the city they are in. In other words, they are in a place, but they're not of the place. Their obligation is to the discipline, which is placeless. And so we serve in a station in a school, but we're not necessarily, let's say, totally obligated to those sets of immediate response to the various constituencies of a city. In fact, our obligation is a discipline, and by being true to that, we can basically become much more instrumental, specifically outside the walls of the embassy. So in any case, I decided I would speak as a local. Speaking as a local meant I checked the New York Times, was the rant. Basically, Chicago is the city of the rant, from David Mamet on. So if you read the New York Times, this is the genre of how you speak in Chicago, so I figured it was legitimate to speak as a local and give a rant, so this was my rant. So this is the answer to what next. Less itty, more ism. That's pretty much the position, and that's it in a nutshell. I always thought that IIT, you had to use less and more if you gave a talk there, so I tried to fit that in. But less itty, more ism. So what do I mean by that? I guess I'm trying to understand itties as conditions or facts and isms as positions or ideologies. I think that we are in a moment that is awash with conditions and facts, that we're in a condition and that there are certain facts to uncover. Again, I think it's part of the problem I have with the science and truth model. I think it's what led us, and I am part of this move, I guess, toward the idea of architecture as a form of research, or let's say even the research studio. It doesn't mean I've given up on that genre of work, but I think that the problem is that people have started to believe their own press clippings as if we were really uncovering facts. And that to me was never the purpose of research. But I think that the techno-science, social science model of research has infected the school, and that this is how research is understood and how it's imposed on us. And frankly, that's now not how our discipline works. Our discipline works by, I would say, projecting positions and alternatives, not by recounting the data of facts and conditions. So less itty, more ism, and we all know the itties. Here are some of the itties: sustainability, affordability, accessibility, universality, diversity, identity, interdisciplinarity. This is the language, I would say, of bureaucrats. And also, I have to confess, it is now the language of administrators, which is the language that I'm forced to speak. This is how you get grants. This is how you get promoted. This is how you get support. These are the itty words are the words you have to use because they seem to be neutralized. It's just a condition. The thing about itty words is that they're measurable, which is why bureaucracies love them, and why in a particular moment of economic times as this, the itties take over because, you know, there are percentages, there's numbers, there's ratios, there's dollars attached. All the itties are easily accountable. But I would say that, this is, I suppose, the other kind of thing that bothers me. Because I try to support my faculty, I tend to look up the ACA, what kind of awards they can get, and there are about 8 or so. But the final line of all the criteria is Submissions should convey how they address ideas of cultural, social, economic, or environmental sustainability. In other words, I don't know when the ACSA got taken over by fundamentalists, and I don't know why I have to pay $10,000 a year to be a member of the ACSA when, in fact, my faculty, nor I, nor the research conducted at the school would be up for any of the awards under this condition. Yeah, we can all lie and say, you know, we can reconstruct the practice, but the fact is we shouldn't have to. It's the job of a faculty member and a designer and an architect to set the problem and the terms and the criteria and then be evaluated. It shouldn't have to be this imposed lemming-like pursuit, which I think is I don't know if I can get John to go to the ACSA Administrators Conference, but this will be my cause. This is my bête noire now. Because it's the only way to get grants. You have to say these words. It's like a magic language. And you have to realize isms are just more fun than itties. I mean, urbanity, not so good. Urbanism, pretty interesting. Reality, not so good. Realism, yeah, it's got possibilities. Rationality, rationalism, practicality. This is the big one in Chicago. Everything is practicality. They don't actually understand the difference between practicality and pragmatism in Chicago. In other words, the idea of pragmatism is pretty interesting, which is a kind of experimentation through doing. That's not what they mean. They mean practicality. Formality, you know, stuffy. Formalism could be interesting. The big one, community, not interesting. Communism, pretty interesting. And finally, criticality, which I'm trying to get away from, and toward criticism. And part of this is also because we, as you, are starting a design criticism program, but also I want to get criticality out of criticism. In other words, I want to produce genre of criticism that has separated itself with the historical values of the critical project. In any case, you know, like, I think that you could do this to anything, like, you know, Bobism, that could be okay, but Bobbity is not good. Itties just, they don't work. But, you know, we all are compelled in the kind of world of administration institutions today to use these words, to these conditions that one researches as a kind of fact, as opposed to projecting a clearly artificial and contingent and open to argument ideology. And I think as a discipline that we're best at doing the latter. I would say it's particularly dangerous, this was the rant, particularly given the site, when schools inscribe their names into this as a brand. When schools become species of itties, you really start to have a problem. But it did give me a clue, which was to say, like, okay, I know we're not going to go that way, but I'm not sure how it's going to begin, but I know how I want it to end. And I survived the whole lecture. But I realized I was maybe getting a little, you know, maybe it was a little bit bad on the science thing. And so I decided to read some historians and philosophers of science, in particular Paul Feyerabend's Against Method. And under this definition, I can actually think I would be more sympathetic to, too bright for you? These are my colors. These are my colors. Not red and black. That's IIT. You got 3 more to go. Knowledge is not a gradual approach to truth. It is rather an ever-increasing ocean of mutually incompatible alternatives. Nothing is ever settled. The task of the scientist is to make the weaker case the stronger, as the sophist said. And this, I think, is actually, I can get behind this as a position for architecture as a discipline. Feyerabend again. We need a set of alternative assumptions, or, as it were, an entire alternative world. We need a dream world in order to discover the real world we think we inhabit, and which may actually be just another dream world. We must invent a new conceptual system that suspends or clashes with the most carefully established observational results, and introduces perceptions that can